It's James's lemon mini cake for dessert. And that's his dinner. It's a Cuban rice thingy and some other stuff. And he's going to talk about Elvis Presley the Searcher. And maybe some Joni Mitchell. We'll see if he gets around to that. So, go ahead.
So earlier I reviewed this little plant. It is, 11 on a scale of 10. And I said I'd be preserving the leaves. This is not a very good book. According to one right-wing source, it'd say. So the leaves are a little bit decrepit, but I don't care.
And you said that the peppers tasted good too.
They did, nice and mild, which is kind of like the way I like spicy stuff. Pauline might not like it that much. But, so I'll go with this now that it's fresh in my mind. Yeah. So I did watch the beginning of it a while back. I didn't get through much of it. I think it's about 3 hours and 20 minutes or something like that, the whole special. So it's I didn't get the special feature, but I don't know if I've got the energy for it. In conversation with Priscilla Presley, Tom Zimney, never heard of. Zimney, what is that, winter or something like that in Slavic. Jerry Schilling, who was a long-time, could you call him associate, maybe flunky of Elvis Presley. I don't know this Scott Bowman. So it's a long piece. It wasn't a very long life. I think he was 42 when he died, 1977, born 35. So the calculation seems to indicate something like 42. They were saying he recorded something like maybe 750 songs. Wow, that's too many. What's that, about 90 albums or something like that? What? Am I exaggerating? No, I don't think so. 90 albums?
Look at that beautiful bird.
Where?
Put you right there.
I can't see it. The lilac's kind of in the way. Oh, I see it there. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. We get to see a lot of nice birds nowadays. So, how many concert dates? They're saying 1,400. That's about a 20-year recording or touring or recording career. That's way too many. Like 90 albums in the space of 20 years. What does that work out? Well, cancel the zeros. 2 goes into 9. 4.5 times. That's like the equivalent of 4.5 albums per year. Huh? And then touring, they go, oh, that's tough touring life. Okay, that's 1,400 in a career of 20, that could have been 20 years of touring. Well, that's what, average of about 70 performances per year. That's not that much. There'd be country artists who do maybe 300 back in the day. Not so much anymore, I suppose, with Taylor Swift, but who would do maybe 300 performances a year, and that's like we're traveling around. It's a pretty depressing kind of view. You look at Elvis, and there were a lot of people responsible for him falling apart, basically, and dying early. He basically killed himself, but he had a lot of people who were enabling him, a lot of people who were actually co-conspirators in him killing himself. I call it when people die of drug overdoses, alcohol problems, death on the installment plan, suicide on the installment plan. Death on the installment plan goes back to a guy called Céline, a French writer, writing, let's say, at the end of World War II. Death on credit, so I call it suicide on credit. Anyway, so U.S. Army got him heavily into amphetamines when he was on, it's not so much patrols, but exercises, military exercises. And now apparently he had tasted the joys of amphetamines before he joined military, but this would have been industrial strength and kind of like assembly line use of amphetamines when he was involved in the U.S. Army. I don't know when that was, 59, 60 or something like that. Maybe late 58. I think so. A couple of years served in Germany. Then there was the flunky manager. Of course, there were the doctors that were feeding prescriptions. Priscilla Presley says that he never used a non-prescription drug in his life. All the prescription drugs, all the drugs he was using came in using anything for prescription, and that probably is pretty close to the truth. But there were what was one of the doctors, Dr. Nick or something like that. You know, like I think he just treated Elvis. I don't know if he treated anyone else. So Elvis was his meal ticket. Awful person.
That's what it was.
Okay, so that's a house finch.
It was, but I've never noticed. It's a yellowish male house finch. I always thought the males were red like that.
Well, there you go. But this is
I
a
guess some of
separate
them are
morph or
yellowish.
something like that. Is that the term they use?
I suppose.
It doesn't say more, but anyway, it's a sweet-looking little thing with a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow.
It doesn't really have red. It's yellowish and peachish kind of head.
Okay, red. Peachish.
I'll hope it comes back and then I can show you.
Anyway, it's a nice little thing. It's probably going to be back. There's a lot of temptation here on the deck. And,
I can put more temptation out.
Yeah.
While you're talking.
So there were the corrupt doctors. There was Priscilla. I don't think was the best match for him. I don't think he was the best match for Priscilla, but that should be obvious. And for those of you who are too young to know, Priscilla is Priscilla Presley. Girl, I guess he hitched up with when she was, I'm hoping it was 14 and not 13 years old. Apparently, you won't hear this from her, you wouldn't. She kind of liked the rough stuff, so that's why she liked Elvis and the early image in the 50s. And apparently he was more into, like cuddling and stuff like that, necking, so on and so forth. And like when she dumped Elvis, she went for a guy who was a karate expert, Mike Stone. I wonder if that was his real name. Anyway, tough guy, all this sort of stuff. And she wanted him to rock out, she's enthused about the special that he did. I believe it's 1968, kind of like a comeback special. And that's actually what he should have been doing. Instead of touring around or doing Las Vegas, 2 shows a night, and it would be, they're saying like there'd be a month stand, if I understood correctly, and there'd be 61 shows, a month stand, and 61 shows. That's 2 shows one in the evening and one at night. Of course he'd be on that would emphasize the need for uppers and downers, uppers before each show, a downer after, so he could rest in the case of the first show and sleep after the other. I presume we crashed for a little while in between, hard to say. And of course there were the grody movies, like when I hit Canada in '64, Elvis was I was 10 years old. And I didn't like the Beatles, but Elvis it wasn't a question of not liking him. It was just, he seemed goofy. He seemed like a goofy old guy. And how old? Well, he wasn't even 30, I don't think. Born 35, he would have turned 30 in '65. And he's a goofy old guy. And it's because of these goofy movies that the Colonel, who was He's the kind of illegal immigrant that should have been sent back at the end of someone's toe. So he's an exploiter. He was an illegal immigrant from Holland. And it was amazing how he conned Elvis. He gave out a snowman award for snowing people. And Elvis kind of was enthused about this, or at least went along for the ride. I don't think Elvis realized really that the biggest snow job that the Colonel ever pulled was this ongoing snow job he did with Elvis. Poor old Elvis, a stupid country hick. And he came from the country. Don't let anyone fool you. Well, not really the country, Tupelo, which isn't Memphis or anything like that. Tupelo, Mississippi. It's not even the same state as Memphis, which is in Tennessee. It's kind of right next door to Tupelo. That's the way the geography works out.
Boy, do I ever not know American geography.
Yeah, well, I had one guy, a geology prof, he's a wonderful guy. I can remember he was flashing.
Tell you anything about?
He was flashing a map of the United States with the states outlined, but they weren't labeled. And this was a big class. It could have seated. It had maybe 30 people attending it, but I was sitting right at the back, and it probably could seat, I don't want to exaggerate, but maybe 50. It feels as though it's 70 or something like that. But anyway, he said, "James, help me here. Which state is the epicenter for the New Madrid earthquake?" And I believe it was Missouri. And so I said, "That's Missouri." He didn't know it was Missouri or something like that. It just showed where the epicenter was. And then he said, "Well, I knew it's near Tennessee because here's Memphis, and the map wasn't that big. And Tennessee, looking at it from your angle, goes like this. And then right at this corner, like at the southwest corner, is Memphis." And so he said, "Well, that must be Mississippi." So he thought that was Mississippi going this way, but Mississippi actually goes this way, south of Memphis.
Well, I don't feel so bad if a university prof is.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's a geology prof, and he would have. It's not his. He's a world-class prof. Yeah. In geology and stuff like that. Stuff that when you take these, even within your own, something that's like your own discipline, eventually you just concentrate.
Yeah, I shouldn't have thought that way, because I know people have expected me to know what all the plants are. Every plant, you know, and it's because I've studied horticulture, and it's like, whoa, no, not nearly. Like, what do you...
And you would have been dealing with domesticated plants when you see stuff out in the wild.
Yeah.
And I know one guy who was a professional, and you've seen him too on CBC. He was wonderful. I think it was Sunday afternoon, or maybe Saturday, I can't remember. Anyway, it was almost impossible, it seemed, to stump him. But there'd be times when these co-hosts would say, "So what's this?" And he'd say, "I don't know." So you can't know everything and all that sort of stuff. I can remember back in the day, I'd memorized pretty well. This was as in university, pretty well. Our Blue Jays back. Pretty well.
Well, he pretty much lives here.
Yeah, that's good. I like it that way.
Yeah,
I like it like that, as Dave Clark 5 once sang. At any rate, so I memorized pretty well all of William Butler Yeats' lyric poetry. There was this one guy in philosophy.
And the house finch is right there.
Okay, do you want to get a picture of it?
No, I just hope it stays until you're done.
Anyway, he in philosophy, and eventually we ended up being agnostics when it came to our relative appreciation of each other. So I was kind of surprised to find out that he'd gone to Princeton. He'd got a BA here in Lethbridge, and then all it has on his curriculum vitae, he's not ashamed of showing that he came from Lethbridge. Why? Because from what I can tell, he didn't get his MA at Princeton. It was just PhD. That's how good he was. Now he's not at the greatest university now. Last time I checked, is McMaster, but it's not the worst in Canada. It's in Hamilton. And but I can remember. I mean, the guy was sharp. Every class, you know, he always had a question for the prof, and the prof would kind of say, "I'm glad you asked that," or something like that. It was amazing. A question for the prof instead of the prof having a question for the students. And generally, those questions were apropos and so on and so forth. Well, pretty well every time. And but I can remember one time he said, so he just finished reading, what was it, Sort of a Rustrum or something like that. Rustrum? Oh. By William Butler Yeats. So it's actually, maybe you call it a short epic. And I'd read it at one point, but it hadn't registered. It's not that good. So it's the kind of thing that a philosophy person would be, something a bit longer, you know what I'm saying? And I suspect it kind of judged, well, who is this guy? You know, like he's kind of walking around talking about Yeats and so on and so forth. And, you know, he one time, like I dropped out of a logic class, and he said, I knew you'd do it. And I'm not saying anything about you, dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying anything about you.
Just keep talking. I'm going to try to take the camera and film him while you're talking.
Sure, exactly right.
I'm hoping.
Anyway, Elvis, I mean, it's the real, well, it basically be borderline criminal con job was done by the Colonel Parker, so-called. He wasn't a colonel, had never been a colonel. Anyway, it's just something like a tragedy. I don't think of it as a great tragedy because I don't think he was that
easy to see him right there.
talented. He was a pretty good performer. He didn't have the greatest material. He didn't have the worst. I mean, you look at Jackie Wilson, who actually was a better performer than Elvis, better dancer, a better singer. You know, like I think Jackie Wilson had operatic range and something like operatic power. And but the material, poor Jackie Wilson. I can remember I got Jackie Wilson's big hits. It was, of course, remained in a bargain bin for records. I got it, put that on the turntable, and it just kind of like fell flat on the turntable. It's like a cake that fell flat or something like that. Not that bad. It fell flat by comparison with my expectations. So that's the way it goes. And, you know, like when it comes to material, Sam Cooke was maybe as good a performer as Elvis. I don't think he had the... Like Jackie Wilson, again, he couldn't do as many things as Elvis could do. Elvis could do country, could do pop, different types of pop. You know, in this thing, he blows Frank Sinatra off the stage. After he came out of the army, Elvis is on Sinatra. Yeah, Sinatra used to have a TV show for a while. And he's on his show, and they're saying, oh, they did each other's hits. Yeah. Like Elvis had his thing. There's no way Frankie could do a rock and roll thing. I don't think he could do justice to a country and western thing. But you know, they're doing an Elvis hit done swing style. Can't use a Heartbreak Hotel or something like that. Love Me Tender. Maybe that's what it is. And you know, Frankie's doing an okay job. Elvis is singing it too. He's singing swing. Huh? And you know, then they sing harmony, and it does sound pretty. You know, the two guys singing together. That's good. But Elvis was able to swing with Sinatra stuff. Sinatra. There's any variety of things that Elvis did. Rockabilly, rhythm and blues. That he just would have been lost. Wouldn't even try doing it, I suppose. So Elvis had this flexibility in terms of what he liked, you know, in terms of what he did. Just like gospel. Like real gospel. I can't imagine Sinatra singing just As I Am, or whatever it's called, or some of these things. I mean, white gospel stuff. So, but Sam Cooke wrote a lot, if not most of his material, and some of his stuff is really snappy, like Wonderful World. I can remember when Herman's Hermits did that. I said, I prefer this to everything else that Herman's Hermits put out. And I believe Sam Cooke wrote it. It's got some pretty snazzy kind of lyrics. Yeah. So Sam Cooke, in the overall scheme of things, he died young, maybe even younger than Elvis did. And much more impressive legacy. That's what he's left. Hey there, buddy. Mr. J is back. Do you want some food here? I got some nice food for you. Do you want some of this to eat? Maybe, eh? You want to come over here? There we go. Do you like tomatoes here? Nice and red? Juicy? Not so much the tomatoes. He's more interested in the string beans. There we go, buddy. How about a garbanzo bean? Little chickpea there? The chickpea just drove him right off the railing, so guess I'm going to have to keep a record of that, folks. Chickpeas and Blue Jays don't mix very well. Anyway, yeah, so the general tone in this thing is just this side of adulatory. It doesn't talk about, it mentions and shows a little bit of Anne Margaret doing some dancing with Elvis and saying the Colonel wasn't thrilled about Elvis appearing on the same screen with Anne Margaret outside of this one movie they're showing. And I'm going, yeah, you know, you got to mention some of the off-screen action. I mean, Elvis was a cheating chimp. He liked having Priscilla back in holding down the fort in Graceland while Elvis went apparently did much of the driving all across the United States, or pretty close, going all the way from Memphis to Hollywood. And he'd be cheating like a chimp in Hollywood with starlets and wannabe starlets and this, that, and the other thing. They didn't really talk that much about the drugs. So this guy had some problems. And, you know, when it comes to being like a cheating chimp, you got problems, just keep them to yourself. And you're not doing that when you're a cheating chimp. You're listening, Mick Jagger, Rod Stewart, all you stupid cheating chimps. And, you know, like when you've got a kid, you'd better get off the dope. You know, newsflash, I've been on dope. I've been on hydromorphone. Was that my choice? Absolutely not. I didn't want to go on it. But my back was in such bad shape about 12 years ago, they put me on it. They had me on something like OxyContin, one of those Oxy whatevers. And they were saying that's just going to whack your kidneys and liver and whatever, and we got to switch you over onto an opioid. So I said, well, I don't want to get hooked. And all they said was, they had already given me 18 months on the outside with treatment to live. And so the one doctor said to me, James, do you like pain? You're dying. Who cares if you get hooked? I didn't get hooked. I went cold turkey on the stuff. No choice of mine. We were coming down from Grand Prairie to Lethbridge here after I'd been on this stuff for about a year, the hydromorphone. And I pack first, uncharacteristically. Pauline oftentimes will put a lot of stuff in the car, whether we're going up to Grand Prairie or coming down. And we were coming down, and there was a lot of stuff packed on top of my stuff. So, first day when we were coming down through the mountain parks, and we spent parts of 3 days coming down, one full day there, I couldn't for the life of me find that hydromorphone. So I went cold turkey. I didn't have one symptom, not one. The only symptoms I can recall from hydromorphone was I can't recall it really doing much for my back pain, and it caused me nausea, bad nausea. You know, like to the point where sometimes I couldn't eat food. I can remember going to a restaurant, and it had wonderful food. It had a great reputation. It's in Beaver Lodge, northwest of Grand Prairie. So we'd driven a ways to get there. I walked in there, and there was just this gust of the warm smell of the food cooking, and I just ran to the washroom, well, as fast as I could go. It wasn't running. I think I was on a walker. And I just puked. So, was it the chemo that I was on? Absolutely not. The chemo I was on was very mild. I was on that then, and I went through it again about 4.5 years later. But this time I wasn't on hydromorphone. No nausea at all. None. Opioids. Disgusting stuff. So if you've got a kid, like Elvis with Lisa Marie, you gotta man up, person up, or whatever, and drop the stuff. It's possible to do it. He didn't. And I'm telling you, when you get a monkey on your back, like prescription drugs or whatever, you know, that monkey, it doesn't take long for it to get to be a gorilla, and that gorilla ultimately killed him like crazy. Now I'm going to start talking a little bit about Joni Mitchell here. This is her Archives Volume 2, the reprise here, speaking of Frank Sinatra, reprise. So I think that was a record company that was started by Frank Sinatra. There were, I think, who else was on it? Was Neil Young on it? I can't remember who all. Anyway, so this has things like Midnight Cowboy, which I guess she wrote something like a theme song for the movie. It wasn't, no takers. Dawn Treader's Song to a Seagull. This is stuff off of her first released album. Another version of Midnight Cowboy. A couple of things done at someone's apartment. Not very good stuff. I Had a King, Fiddle in the Drum with a piano demo. It was awful stuff. It's a home demo. With the piano, not done a cappella. Roses Blue, like early on, even on to her third album, she occasionally has inversion. No, Blue Roses, no, not Roses Blue. Here's one song to Seagull, Jeremy. I don't think that one was ever put out. Conversation, I don't know if that was put out, Song to a Seagull. I think that was on her third album. Both Sides Now, that was on her second album. Gift of the Magi, I don't know. It's Easy, there's another one that wasn't released. Songs to Aging Children Songs Come to Aging Children. So she had some trouble with inversion early on. Night in the City, that's a pretty good song. Come to the Sunshine. So these are like, this is done live at the Woo Coffee House. I don't know that comes the Pirate of Penance. Conversation again, The Way It Is, Dawn Treader, Marcy, Nathan Lafreniere, Dr. Junk, never heard that one before. Michael from Mountains, Hotel the Drummer Man, I don't know Where I Stand, I know that one. I think that's up for a second. Sisotobel Lane, she released that one. Ladies of the Canyon. So this is done in '68, but that wasn't released until 1970, as I recall, the third album. Come to the Sunshine. Oh yeah, Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. They have some chatter from her.